Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Alnura Belyalova. I'm a director of public relations at Input Global. We are a marketing agency that is in the business of making incredible startups and founders get the visibility that they deserve. And I actually do have an incredible entrepreneur with me on stage today with a very, very timely topic. But Andrew, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure, thank you. Hi guys, my name is Andrew Sobko. I'm the founder and CEO of Argentum AI. Argentum AI, maybe I'll give you guys this quick story, why we even exist. Over the last 2 years, probably met with hundreds of new entrepreneurs that came to me, and because of my historical relationships with some very well-known private equities, and like, hey, I'm building a data center. Oh, hey, I secured electricity or some power. Or I secured some allocation from NVIDIA GPUs. I want to be a GPU entrepreneur. Can you help us with go-to-market strategy? And number two interesting data point for me was that some of the most successful AI infrastructure stories that generated billions and billions for shareholders were companies like CoreWeave and Crusoe, right? And just a few years ago, they were Bitcoin miners, and they converted into this AI infrastructure play. So our idea was like, look, if we can build something that is like Airbnb of compute, asset-light platform, again, bring supply, aggregate supply from a lot of independent players that today just constantly competing with each other. We're seeing all different clouds, prices all over the place. There's, again, we can talk about it. The prices we're seeing, if you're trying to procure thousands of GPUs, it could be in hundreds of millions of dollars spreads, right? Just from better known cloud, let's say Neo Cloud, NCP, or in some hyperscalers and some new Neo Clouds, what they charge. So again, we started building, we started focusing, kind of creating this kind of decentralized marketplace for compute, add an auction layer, focus also on the second life GPUs, which allows us to really democratize access to compute, really maximize affordability and accessibility, and that's what Argentum stands for. And again, our goal within the next 2 years to have 1 million GPUs on the marketplace, which will potentially position us to be, toe-to-toe that we can actually compete with some of the largest hyperscalers.
Amazing. I was just going to say, very, very ambitious goal. Actually, the reason why I said why it's, what you're building is so, timely is I'm going to ask a question. Has anyone experienced an issue accessing internet over the last week and getting like this Cloudflare error? Please get your hands up. Okay, I'm seeing a few hands up. So that's AWS, Cloudflare outages. We've now experienced it, right? Before it used to be a potential issue. Now, it actually happened. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the behind the scenes of that? Like, what is happening? Why are we getting these outages?
So a couple interesting data points. So number one, a few weeks ago in US, you couldn't even order a Starbucks coffee through app, right? Which is, instead of waiting in line, it became very popular globally. And because of examples what happened to AWS and others. And as of just a few weeks ago, there was another major story where a very large high-frequency trading firm in Chicago went down because their data center got overheated, right?
Overheated.
Just got significantly overheated. So it's more becoming like a structural problem. You cannot run this kind of like AI economy, this new era of AI on infrastructure that was designed in 2010. You cannot get into 2030 in 2010. And just how structurally it's all designed, I think that's the kind of major issues. And we, over the last many months, been heavily educating some of our Fortune 500 partners. If you just work with someone like us who's really can redistribute your information from one side, which is could be taken down for a million different reasons, to another one quickly, you will always stay up. And again, that's the beauty of decentralization. But overall, I like to say that the cloud and the hyperscalers were built for websites, and to build something to kind of sustain this kind of AI huge demand, you got to go decentralized.
Interesting, because that kind of leads me to the next question, right? I mean, you mentioned Starbucks, big hedge funds, Fortune 500. I'm just curious, when you're having those conversations with, these big corporates and companies, and you're trying to kind of pitch them, the decentralized option, I'm sure it's met with a bit of hesitance, right? What's your argument for them? Why is it better?
Yeah, so again, the biggest issue, I've been saying this recently, like as soon as you say you're decentralized, do you have anything to do with potentially, blockchain, one of the major companies, I'm not going to name it, who's also a hyperscaler, just immediately shut down the conversation. And now it took us a couple more weeks to get back in, because simply we had some conversations around incentivizing people on the supply side through token. So building the credibility is the most important, having very strong value proposition. our biggest value proposition today with Argentum over the last few months, we consolidated and we have 40,000 GPUs available for Q1. No one else does. We aggregated, we partner up with hundreds of, let's say, new NCPs. Let's say there's like about 100 and also a lot of professional retail. And globally, we've been successful converting a lot of Bitcoin miners into compute. And we became pretty important partner. And as more demand comes to even some large hyperscalers, right, they all publicly ran out of capacity today. So that's where Argentum comes in. And today we're trying to solve it. We're trying to hold those enterprises' hand to walk them over the finish line. Right? Continue educating them, continue showing them, giving them proof points why this is better. But again, it depends where we at. On our side, we simply have better pricing and we have availability today.
It's interesting because I think education, both on the sort of the enterprise side and the end consumer side, continues to be the the main topic of Web3 and actually getting over that, as you mentioned, the finish line of adoption. But that's more on the, I guess, the front side of it, just getting people to agree to try it and get that other option. But I'm curious in terms of the practicality of it. Can decentralized system compete with the large scale companies like AWS?
Look, I think there's already some proof points. Simply, some people care about, again, affordability. Some people don't. Some people care about being live, or some people don't. And you kind of continue educating. My long-term bet, let's say 5-year bet, I think that 75% of workloads will be run on decentralized compute marketplaces. And again, some top frontier models again will stay on the cloud and within hyperscalers.
Interesting. No, great point that, proof is kind of already in the pudding. But I think let's talk a little bit about energy, because these days, when you talk about AI infrastructure, the lack of energy seems to be a huge pain point. I mean, we've all seen documentaries of people complaining in the US, that are getting data centers built in their neighborhood and energy prices are just skyrocketing. How does Argentum AI or a decentralized system treat energy differently, or does it?
Mm-hmm. Like, number one, the biggest bottleneck today globally, it's all about, again, the energy and electricity, right? Can you get quick enough? My conversations with some Fortune 100 companies today is about, do you guys have anything available in Q1 and Q2? And how many megawatts available? And do you have anything 50 megawatts or more? So we went from the GPU shortage and everyone's screaming about, getting allocation from NVIDIA, to now everyone's screaming around, okay, I need to secure electricity. Do you have any relationship with any local government? And our view of decentralization, right? If you are truly build this fully decentralized network, again, you really prove those kind of cross-border transactions where you can have, again, maybe some capacity sitting within some country where there's the cheapest electricity. I'm not going to make specific country. Let's say somewhere in Eastern Europe, and you have a demand in some neighboring country, right? And that's how you solve the problem at scale. But it's all about, again, you can only do it if you, again, truly decentralized. If you're centralized and you're that specific region, that's your bottleneck. And as we see a lot of demand coming in, and we kind of need to increase our compute capacity probably next 36 months by 10x, it's impossible to do it in a centralized way.
Interesting. I think you called it something like stock exchange for compute. That's essentially what decentralization can bring to the table. Can you talk a little bit more about what do you mean by that, and how exactly would it work, globally?
Yeah. So about this kind of stock exchange example, I like to say that whenever you bring liquidity to something that sits sort of idle, and number two, also around my conversation around second life GPUs, you make industry significantly more efficient. And participants and investors make a lot of money. But number one, you make the industry significantly better. You determine that real price at that particular time. Again, you focus on, we as Argentum, we're building the first spot market for compute.
Oh.
Think about the auction layer. Think about bringing, again, hundreds of suppliers or thousands of suppliers on one end. They're listing their capacity available. They might have different asks for the pricing, and then you have a demand, and that's what determines the real price. So again, our view is, again, you bring liquidity. You focus, our core focus when we started Argentum was on focusing on idle GPUs. And I can give you like many examples where, let's say currently even within hyperscalers, there's like over 30% of GPUs sit idle. Like I'll explain an example. We have very well-known consulting company, let's say one of top 4. They rented capacity, 3,000 GPUs from very well-known hyperscaler. In Q3 and Q4, they have significant spikes that they need more compute to service their clients.
Yep.
And there's nothing available. But in Q1 and Q2, they're usually slow, but they're still paying. They have a great balance sheet. They don't have real issues, but the hyperscale doesn't really care if you use them or not.
Yep.
So what we come in, and this large consulting firm came to us, and they're like, "Can we monetize maybe just 3 months? Can we take advantage of your guys' spot market?" And we're like, "Absolutely." And at that moment, they don't really care. They just want to offset some of the costs, not even full costs. And that's, again, our focus on idle GPUs, and then our focus on the second life GPUs, which is becoming, like, I think, a major issue. We already know about 500,000 of, let's say, H100s, H200s retiring in the next 18 months, 500,000 units. And some large companies don't really care. They just need to physically rotate them and replace them because they cannot afford not to have the new ones, right?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think like planning for that energy is such a huge pain point, and the fact that you can bring that flexibility to enterprise is probably a very, very good seller.
Yeah, it's exactly what we are, a flexible compute.
Apart from obviously the flexible compute, the performance that you say can compete with the hyperscalers, let's talk a little bit about security, because I think that's another key vertical when it comes to onboarding corporates and enterprise. How security looks from the decentralized point of view?
Yeah, so on the decentralized point of view, again, we're zero knowledge, staking-based trust, and we are trying to be first post-quantum secured, which will take a little bit of effort, but I think we're pretty close on that. And number two, as continue, again, focusing on enterprises. Some enterprises requesting from us, they want to understand our also physical security from the partners that we're using. But on the decentralized, again, zero knowledge and stake-based trust, which is, I would like to say, like almost impossible to hack.
Makes sense.
And if hopefully soon we'll be the first post-quantum secured marketplace.
It probably takes quite a bit of that education that you mentioned at the beginning to actually explain why that zero knowledge proofs tech is probably even more immutable than the more centralized systems.
Yeah, but it's been a very interesting trend. Like over the last, I would say, some of the most notable people in US from the venture capital side, from Eric Schmidt, former president of Google, he talks about the zero knowledge. And recently Ben Horowitz made multiple interviews from Andreessen Horowitz. So I think people getting it, they slowly getting it, but we are looking into the future, and I'm crystal clear on our vision and where we're going, and some other people just kind of helping us, also educating the market, and I think we'll get there very soon.
Interesting. I'd like to zoom out from Argentum AI just a little bit, just in the broader context of AI infra market today. I mean, I think everyone, and not just people that are in the industry, but I feel like it's become part of mainstream news. Are we in AI bubble? Is the U.S. stock market overvalued because of just a couple of companies that are essentially so focused on that AI infrastructure? What is your take on this? Like, is it overvalued? Is it misunderstood?
There are a few data points here. Like number one, if we talk about the bubble, I think we might slightly be in some sort of complications around creative financial structures, how the capex and how GPUs were financed historically. We saw like the biggest innovation in the financial engineering came from CoreWeave, right? Mm-hmm. And CoreWeave became like pretty big player just simply because understand the depreciation really well. So. But some of the newer players that have been entering the space, they getting successfully some major allocations from NVIDIA, maybe even some from Google, from TPU side. And I'm seeing that the financial structures, how they're financing it, are very complex and very expensive. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's just so much demand.
Right.
And, us seeing, again, like one of our partners has over 10,000 companies on the wait list today on the demand side. Like think about those startups that maybe today raised $20 million and tomorrow going to raise $300 million. Right? They need a lot more compute. So we predict that, again, the demand for compute will significantly scale, but who's going to survive? My kind of long-term prediction that the neo-cloud space will get consolidated. And again, our view of decentralization and kind of owning the go-to-market, owning the demand is the way to go and the way to win. And
makes sense.
That's why we are, again, very scalable. We are asset light, and that's how we think about this stuff.
So essentially, let the market do what it does best, balance things out. We just have to wait and see. Well, actually, also, again, on the larger perspective, when we talk about AI, I feel like these days, it's either you're talking about LLMs or you're talking about chips. What is Argentum's take? I mean, like, I know you're more on the infrastructure side. You're helping create that compute power. Is there anything else that you are working on?
Yeah. Number one, LLMs are very, very GPU hungry, right? And we're seeing some of the issues and some major commitments from OpenAI and all of the major commitments. but we believe there is a better way of doing this and thinking about this. So we would like to, as of yesterday, we briefly started announcing our new competition called Project Saturn, where again we bring in hundreds and hundreds of very smart developers globally. We announced a $1 million prize to create the best and the most energy efficient model that exists. And again, we're not married today to LLMs. We've been historically very big believers in small language models, but as of today, it could be some quantum-inspired model, or it could be some new alien technology from next century. So we are bringing the smartest people to create the most efficient model that can actually, I'm not saying to compete or outcompete, but again, can focus on energy efficiency. And we'll see how it goes. But again, there's a lot of interesting people already participating and applying to this new program.
Interesting. And obviously with other LLMs that are incredibly popular and I think have become just part of our life, whether we want to or not. Why do you think there is such a big need for, the energy efficient LLM?
Go back to, again, electricity, which is energy is the biggest right now bottleneck. And again, we can talk also about the chips, right? How energy, how hungry, again, LLMs are towards the chip, towards the GPUs.
And you feel like the pre-existing, LLMs, they do not necessarily see that as the main, let's say, main challenge that they try to tackle.
Yeah. Again, there's just so much waste out there. So if you think about it, we've been saying about this, example. If you're trying to analyze the mortgage default rate in California, you don't really need to understand, to see and analyze all of the data in Brazil. It's not relevant. Why would you waste all of the energy on it? That's where small language come in.
Very excited for how Project Saturn will play out. We'll definitely keep an eye out on it. We are about to finish this really exciting fireside chat, but I've got a couple of really quick blitz questions to you, right?
Sure.
So what is more overhyped right now, AGI or cloud infrastructure?
Cloud.
Interesting. If AWS went down for 28 hours, what would break first?
Backbone of payments.
Payments. Interesting. Bigger bottleneck in 2026, GPUs, RAM, electricity, or trust?
I think electricity is number one. Trust is number two.
Got it. Makes sense. And last but not least, what's one thing AI builders are still getting wrong about the infrastructure?
Again, efficiency of some of the models, and again, also efficiency of even some of the GPU performance.
Makes sense. Well, ladies and gents, please a round of applause for Andrew Sobko.
Thank you.
It was a very, very exciting conversation.